There we go. So we're now recording the session, and I'm also going to press play to show my screen. And I've got a little tab here that you probably can't see, but this tells me what you guys are seeing, so it sort of shows me what the latency in the system is. So anyway, let's crack on. So thanks for joining me tonight. Obviously, tonight's session is for CIPFA members through your membership rewards portal. So great to have you all on. Tonight's all about how to write a great CV. This isn't one of those boring top 10 tips sessions. You know, this is really scientific stuff we're going to talk about today. So hopefully you'll find it really, really interesting. I'm obviously Matt Craven. I run and manage a company called the CV and Interview Advisors. I'll tell you a little bit about us in a minute. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint presentation I've got on screen, but also I will be showing you a CV on screen as well, just as we go through, so that you've got a visual interpretation of what we're talking about. Okay, so let's move on to the first slide. So who are we, the CV and Interview Advisors? Well, we've been kicking around this industry since 2006, I think it was. I started this in 2005 doing my market research, and then set up in 2006 properly. I've operated in a number of senior management roles. I've set up a number of businesses. I worked as a headhunter in the city and, well, in Leeds, in Essex, and in the city in London. So I've done everything from junior temporary contract recruitment all the way through to senior exec headhunting. I do a lot of international speaking. I'm considered to be a resident expert for a number of high-profile organizations. I also do quite a lot of work with recruitment businesses as well to help them rapidly transform candidate CVs into something that their clients are going to want to see and act upon. So that's a little bit about us. We do have a reputation, and we certainly aim to be the highest quality provider of CV writing services, certainly in the UK, although as we say, we operate internationally. So I've got a team of 3 guys in the US, I've got a guy in Canada, I've got 2 people in Europe, and the rest of them dotted around the UK. So we do have an international client base. So I guess you could say we aim to be the best in the world, although it might be a rather grandiose statement to make, but we certainly attempt to be the best in the UK. My team's quite interesting, and we tend to recruit people who've been around and done it, who've had successful careers. Some of my guys come from certified CV resume writing backgrounds and coaching backgrounds, but a big chunk of my team come from industry. So I've got a guy who was an IT program director, a few people who've been like interim managers at a senior level doing business transformation stuff. I got a guy with a PhD in microbiology, people from HR and learning and development backgrounds. We probably do more CVs for finance or accountancy candidates and IT people than we do anything else. So accountancy and IT really is bread and butter for us. And in fact, we do quite a lot of work with other accountancy bodies such as the ACCA and people like that. Okay, good stuff. And yeah, I mean, you know, because of our team, we like to think we know the hot skills in your marketplace, which is important when we're writing CVs for our clients. It's not always how you write, which is important, of course, but it's about what you write about. So that's very, very important. There you go. I mean, that's a little bit about us. So at least you know who you're going to be talking to now for the next hour. Okay, good stuff. So next slide. What is a CV? Now, it might be a slightly odd question to lead with, but I think sometimes people really do get the wrong idea of what a CV is or isn't. And I think historically, a lot of people, and to this day, a lot of people think of a CV as being a list of jobs, a list of duties and responsibilities, a list of qualifications, a list of contact details. Now, I'm not saying that stuff shouldn't be in your CV, but if your CV is just a list and nothing else, I would challenge whether or not it's going to be effective for you in the marketplace, or at least as effective as it could be. A CV for us should be a business case that explains to the world why they should hire you. And I'm jumping on a few slides here, but I think that's an important point to make. A CV should present a business case that explains why someone should hire you. Another thing I find quite interesting is that there's this enormous disconnect between recruiters, hiring managers, and people looking for a job. And it seems to be that these three main groups of people in the recruitment lifecycle just are completely, at loggerheads with what each other wants, and what people are told they should do with their CV from reading stuff on the internet generally isn't what recruiters and hiring managers want to see. What a recruiter wants to see is very different to what the hiring manager wants to see. So they're advising people to write CVs in their way, whereas that doesn't necessarily work for the hiring manager. And then you've got the hiring manager on the end of the scale, who's essentially the decision maker, who's not always getting what they want. And when I do consultancy work with recruitment agencies, I'm always saying to them, look guys, you might not give a damn about this candidate being good or bad or indifferent. You're just focused on, can they string a sentence together? Do they look presentable? And does their CV have the same bullet points as the job spec? And believe me guys, that is absolutely how 90% of recruiters recruit. It is nothing more than that, which is why a lot of the 80, 90, 100K recruitment consultants have left the industry to be replaced by sort of 25, 30K graduates with 6 months sales experience. And it's quite interesting when you look at it. But you only have to look at why a lot of employers are now asking candidates to fill out application forms to really understand that CVs at large do not provide them with the information that they really want to see to make decent shortlisting decisions. Quite often when I do stand-up seminars in person, I'll get the room to put their hands up if they're still using the same format they did when they left school or college or university. And usually, not always, but usually half the room at least sticks their hand up. People are quite often using an out-of-date format that isn't going to work in the current climate. So if we summarize this slide, a bad CV is a list. A good CV should be a business case that explains why someone should hire you. And what I mean by that is it needs to really sell you. Don't think of it as a CV. Think of it as your glossy sales brochure. Think of it as a business case that you're presenting to a potential employer to say, look guys, this is why you should hire me. This is what I bring to the table. These are the things I can do for your organization that will benefit you. And of course, and I'll come to this on one of the next slides, but there is a real need now for keyword searches and making sure your CV is keyword rich. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. I'm going to drop some things in at the bottom of each page, which I suppose are food for thought. I think the last slide talked about the success that people who buy professional CV writing services get. And I'm not here to sell too hard to you. I am going to mention our services. Of course I am. But why wouldn't I? I'd be crazy not to. But, it is interesting that those people who invest in this sort of thing do get really good results. And one of our clients actually, who referred 2 other people to us, the third person in the chain said that Peter, who was the first person in the chain, had said to them that they'd had a 500% increase in recruitment activity since they'd had their CV professionally written by us. Now, it's not a statistic that everybody's going to achieve, but certainly people will get a significant uplift in interviews by buying a professional CV writing service. But the statistic I really want to focus on is this one. 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decisions based on the contents of your CV alone. Now, you might think that's obvious, and I think it's obvious, but I don't think the penny's dropped with a lot of people, because I'll get many people that I interact with in a work capacity, in a non-work capacity, who will tell me that they are the best accountant, the best IT project manager, the best marketing person there is out there. And they can't understand why they're not getting interviews. And I'll say to them, well, what have you done with your CV? And they'll tell me, and I'll say, well, does your CV actually tell people how good you are? And they'll be like, well, no, it just surely I shouldn't do that. I don't want. I'm British, of course. I don't need to sell myself. That's not very British, is it? That's what they do in America. So they have this CV which says where they worked and what they did in each role, and they're expecting people to figure out that they're better than the next candidate. And how can anybody do that? How can somebody figure out that you're a good candidate if you don't tell them? And for a lot of people, the penny's just not dropped. So there's no osmotic force, guys. There's no telepathy telling the world how good you are. There's no higher being out there, banging the drum for you. It's all about your CV. And I'll talk later, but about your LinkedIn profile as well. But if your CV isn't telling people that you're good at what you do, no one will ever know. No one's going to find out by some kind of fluke. So I'm going to say it again. 92% of shortlisting decisions are made solely on the content of your CV. Okay, good stuff. So let's move on to the next slide. So just before I talk about professional summaries and explain why we've got a pair of cheap red shoes up here in the top right hand corner, are you all still there, guys, or have you fallen to sleep on your keyboard? You can either use the questions box, or you can use your hands up, but one way or the other, let me know you're still out there, guys. Don't want to be sat here talking to myself. I'm seeing a few hands go up. That's always promising. What have we got in the questions? Oh, yeah, still here. Lots of still here's. Excellent. All right, guys, good stuff. Thank you for the encouragement. That's most appreciated. All right, okay, so professional summaries. So this is the bit at the top of the CV. Let me show you my CV, shall we? So here we go. So I'm just going to look at the audience view. Yep, there you go. You can see what I can see now. So this is my screen. Do you see my CV here, Matt Craven at the top? So this paragraph at the top called Executive Summary, or Professional Summary if that's more appropriate for you. This is what we're going to talk about next. But this is my CV, and this is how we write CVs for our clients. It should look nice and high definition PDF-y to you all out there. So that's good. We'll flip backwards and forwards from this and the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to go back to the presentation now. So the cheap red shoes theory. What's all this about? You're probably all thinking I've gone a little bit mad by now. Why is this guy talking about cheap red shoes? Well, people talk about you having to get someone's attention within 5 seconds. We hear that a lot, don't we? If you don't get someone's attention within 5 seconds, they're not going to read your CV. And I think that's true, but I think it leads people to think that it's something that it's not. It's not about yellow paper. It's not about having a magic Harry Potter jumping out the page saying, hire me. What it is about telling people that you're an appropriate candidate for the job that you're applying for. So if I'm looking for an experienced finance director, I want to know that you're one of them. If I'm looking for a qualified management accountant, I want to know that you're one of them. So it's important that people can grasp very early on that you're the type of person they're looking for. And the cheap red shoes theory is sort of supports that. So imagine if you all woke up tomorrow, and you probably won't, but if you had all woken up tomorrow and had this burning desire to buy a pair of cheap red shoes, you would probably all maybe jump onto the internet and type into Google cheap red shoes. And then all of a sudden you'd hit return, and all of a sudden all these search results would pop up. And maybe you'll get an advert pop up that says, we sell shoes of all shapes and sizes and prices. And you'll think to yourself, okay, so you probably sell cheap red shoes, but you've not actually specifically told me that. You've just told me you sell all sorts of different shoes, and they're all different colors and shapes and prices. So am I going to click your advert and invest 10 minutes of my life fishing around your internet, fishing around your website, trying to find some cheap red shoes? Or alternatively, am I going to go over here and am I going to click this advert that says specifically, we sell cheap red shoes? So relate that to you guys, because I imagine that there are quite a few of you out there whose opening line on their CV will say that you're an experienced finance professional with experience across multiple or all areas of finance. I see that a lot. But what does that really mean? It just means you work in finance, nothing more, nothing less. But if I'm looking for an experienced management accountant with a certain qualification who's got a load of experience in developing, robust reporting capability to aid business decision making, well, you better tell me that you're one of them. I don't want the woolly and ambiguous, you're a finance professional with experience across lots of areas of finance, That doesn't really tell me what I want to hear. I want you to tell me that you're the person that I am searching for. So a bit like when you search on Google, I want you to use the search term that I searched on. And that's when the CV gets people's attention in 5 seconds. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Where we get a little bit more technical is when I start talking about value propositions. The last part of what I just said was the value proposition. That bit about having a track record of developing sophisticated reporting capability that aids business decision making. That's a value proposition. It's something that you or that person does that adds value to their future employers. But in line 1 of your CV, you want to try and capture something really high level, what I describe as being the purpose of your professional existence. So if we look at me, as far as we're concerned today, the purpose of my professional existence is to help my clients develop high-impact personal branding documentation, including CVs and LinkedIn profiles, that enhance their ability to find a job. So that is the purpose of my professional existence that you guys might want to invest in. Okay? My wife, she's in the fitness industry. She might tell you that the purpose of her professional existence is to develop leading-edge exercise programs that enhance the performance of professional athletes. Our marketing manager, Carolyn and Laura, they might tell you that they have a track record of developing low-cost, maybe even recession-busting marketing strategies that deliver superior return on investment for SMEs. That is the purpose of their professional existence. So you guys out there, all 73 of you, you will all have a purpose to your professional existence. There'll be something that really stands out. It will be that one thing that really stands out about you that is your proposition to a future employer. Okay, good stuff. And I'm going to put an example up on screen in a minute, but once you've described what you are and what your value proposition is, or the purpose of your professional existence, what you've then got to do is think about the things that support that. So what are the top 4 things that you're really good at? The things that you think really, really add value. And you could also argue that these need to be the hot skills in your marketplace. So in everybody's profession, there are certain skills that are hot skills. If you're a finance director or a financial controller and you're at a senior level, then we ought to be mentioning about assembling and managing teams, because that's always going to be part of your role. If you're at a high senior strategic level in finance, you're going to be providing financial oversight and the financial analysis that lies behind business decision making. So again, that might be something that you would mention. If you're a management accountant, you probably want to be talking about developing reporting capability to aid business decision making. If you're a financial accountant, you might want to talk about, preparing statutory returns. But you've got to think to yourself, what are the skills that my employers want me to have? And if you could narrow it down to the top 4 that are always going to come up, then that's a pretty good starting point. So just think about features and benefits, all right? I'm not going to go into that too much now, but I will. The last 2 key strengths when I read you this example are features and benefits. The first 2 aren't. So just when I get to the key strengths include, Listen to the first two compared to the last two, and the last two are much more powerful because they're written in a features and benefits style. Okay, so I'm just going to wait for that to flash up on your screen. There we go. So this is an example of a professional summary. So we might say that someone is an experienced finance director with extensive board level experience and a track record of embedding robust financial governance across an organization to protect cash flow and profitability. And that's probably more aligned to someone operating within a commercial organization, but it doesn't matter. The point's the same. So what are they? They're an experienced FD with extensive board level experience. And what's their value proposition? Well, they've got a track record of embedding robust financial governance across an organization to protect cash flow and profitability. All right? Who doesn't want an FD to have that skill? That's exactly what I'd be looking for. And then key strengths. Number one, assembling and managing finance teams of 20 plus people across disparate international locations. Number two, leading major capital appraisals and doing commercial feasibility analysis for mergers and acquisitions, new product development and diversification strategies. Number three, now think features and benefits, embedding financial ownership across management teams to drive superior budgetary performance. And number four, leading major cost rationalization programs to remove costs from a business and drive profitability. So you get the features and benefits. Okay, good. So that's the professional summary. Quick word of caution, guys. Okay, it's not about random skills. You've got to align this with your marketplace. It's not about fancy words over substance. However, when people buy our services, of course, we write CVs, I guess, at the level you would expect an MBA assignment to be written. That's the kind of level of language you ought to aspire to. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But content's more important than fancy words. And I said earlier, you know, it's not necessarily how you write or how you present it. It's more about the message you're delivering to the marketplace. So content's king. And this is, of course, where we earn our money. You know, people find it quite difficult to be objective about themselves. People find it difficult to know what they should be writing about. Because, guys, people don't know themselves on a professional level. People know themselves on an emotional level, but not on a professional level. We run a great interview coaching webinar. Speak to the guys at CIPFA, and if there's a demand for it, we'll put one on for you. But we do a great interview coaching webinar. And I talk a lot there about how people think they know themselves, but they only know themselves emotionally. They don't know themselves professionally, and they don't look at themselves as a product and a service and sell themselves in the right way. And, of course, this is what we're really good at, and we apply that theory when we're writing the CV. Okay, good. Yeah, and again, I'm dropping another point in here, and I suppose I do want to get you guys thinking about professional CV writing services, because I see how good benefits people get from it. But, you know, it's just that thought, really. I mean, I've done a lot of work from a marketing perspective recently. I do a lot of professional development on marketing because I run a business and I need to be able to market it. But, you know, our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, our YouTube page, our website, you know, they're all external facing portals. And if they look shabby and homemade, that reflects on us as an organization, and people are less likely to buy from us. And that's no different to you guys. You know, if your CV looks homemade and a bit shabby and a bit kind of knocked up, you know, knocked together by candlelight, you know, on an old-fashioned typewriter, I'm sure it's not that bad. But, you know, it's not giving that professional image that you're probably striving for. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So why the heck have I got a picture of Arnie? You're probably all wondering again and thinking I've gone completely doolally. But I don't know whether you've watched Terminator. I never really thought the Terminator films were that great. But, you know, we all know that Arnie had to go back in time because the machines had taken over the world. So Arnie was beamed back in time to sort the whole mess out and make sure that everything was all hunky-dory. And that was his mission in life. Now, I'm not saying the machines have quite taken over the world just yet, but they are taking a bit of a foothold in the recruitment process. There is a very much a automated side now to recruitment. You've got applicant tracking systems, you've got recruitment agency databases, you've got job boards. Somebody somewhere is going to do keyword searches on your CV, and if you don't have the right keywords on there, you're not competing. There are even organizations out there now who will make sure that the keyword density of your CV is right. Now, we look at that. I don't think we go into it in quite the same detail as these guys do. It's very interesting though. But it's all about search engine optimizing your CV in the same way that we search engine optimize our website so it comes higher up on the Google searches. You need to be search engine optimizing your CV so it comes further up on the database searches, basically. And this really is just a menu of all your skills. So, you know, you could put things like this in there. Just a nice list. And I'll show you my CV again. There we go. It's this section here. I don't know whether you can see my my mouse moving, but anyway, it's the second box down, so you can see how that looks. Pretty straightforward. Okay, I'm just going to go back now to the presentation. Good. Okay, moving swiftly on. Career highlights. Sorry guys, my there we go. Right, career highlights. Again, I like to throw in these silly little photographs just to keep you all slightly amused whilst we're going through quite a dry subject. Career highlights. Why have we got Pat Sharp there? I don't know how many of you are from the 80s, but you remember Pat Sharp. He was I think he was in a band. He did a bit of singing, then he was a DJ. But anyway, to me, this guy had the best highlights of the 80s. Now, I'm not talking about hair highlights here. I'm talking about career highlights. But this is something that's really, really powerful on your CV. This is a section where we showcase your 3 biggest achievements you've had in your career. Now, there is a caveat here. If you're not very good at writing little case studies, and these are not going to translate very well, you're probably better off not trying this at home. Because if you make a pig's ear of this, you get 3 pig's ears on page 1 of your CV, and that's not ideal. But if you are able to write these, then they are very powerful. And I am just going to show you my CV again, because I think it's better that you see where these are displayed on the CV. So I'm just scrolling down here. So this is the 3rd section. This is still, we're only halfway down page 1. You can see there are 3 little case studies, little stories there, all uniformly written, all 6 lines, and they're called career highlights. So that's what we're going to go through now. So we write them using a little formula called STAR. And this is fantastic, and again, something we talk about a lot when we're doing our interview coaching. It's a great way to talk through an example of something you've done, a project, an achievement, but it's also a great way of writing them. Situation, task, actions, and result. And here's an example of one. This is something from my career. I used to work for a company called Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Gosh, it's about, blimey, that's 19 years ago now. This is when they first came to the UK from the US, 19 years ago, blimey. But I joined them on their management trainee program straight from uni and worked my way up. I did all right there. I was one of their better managers for a period of time. And anyway, the situation is that Enterprise Rent-A-Car acquired an unprofitable competitor in the south of England that required transformation. So this company had gone bust. They were based in Brighton, and they covered that whole south, well, quite a lot of the south coast area, but they'd gone bust. They had operational issues, they had cash flow issues. My task was that I was appointed as operations manager to rebrand the business, embed the enterprise business model, and drive profitability. So how did I do it? What were my actions? Well, I performed a top-to-bottom review of the business. I exited underperforming staff, recruited a new team, trained them, oversaw an office refurb, introduced changes to their commercial model, and led business development activity. And the result is that I succeeded in rebranding the business and achieving a £10,000 per month profitability within 6 months. So that's how STAR works. And as you can see from my CV, there are 3 on there. You would do the same thing. You would have 3 nice little stories written in STAR on page 1 of your CV. And that's how you front load the CV with all the powerful stuff. Certain people will tell you that you can't put achievements on page 1. I agree with that if you're going to put them on there as like 1 or 2 liners. If you were just to put turned around a failing car rental firm and took them from a loss to a 10k per month profit, wouldn't work, guys, because there's not enough context wrapped around it for it to stand alone. If you were going to do it that way, you would just put that in an achievement section as part of the job that it relates to. But if you're going to put it on page 1 and showcase it and make it stand alone, you have to write it as a mini case study. So that's the theory, and it really works. But they've got to be written well, and they've got to be relevant. Another little statistic for you, which is myself and actually one of my CV writers, David Harries, who's a very seasoned business guy. We were working on a startup project together. I'm not with it anymore. He still is, but he put together a business plan, did a load of research, and I was actually quite interested to see that there are actually 2 million live jobs in the UK last year. That's a hell of a lot of jobs. A lot of people blame a lack of interviews on the recession and the economy at large, but the jobs are out there. You know, there is they got to be about 2.8 million unemployed people, I think there was at one point in time, and I think those numbers were probably a bit fudged, but there were still 2 million live jobs last year that needed filling. So, you know, you guys are pretty sharp guys. You've got professional qualifications. I would expect you to have been able to get one of those 2 million live jobs. The only thing that's standing between getting one and not is your CV and your LinkedIn profile, nothing else. And I guess to an extent your interview technique. Okay, good stuff. So that's the career highlights. So a quick word of caution before, again, I check that you're all still there. If your examples are weak, it highlights failure. They've got to be relevant and targeted. The result must be quantifiable and linked to the key performance indicators that you perform against. And of course, this is where we earn our money. This is what we're good at. You know, a lot of our clients come to us because they don't know their value proposition. They don't know the hot skills in their marketplace. And actually, I'm just going to say this. You might think that our clients are typically illiterate people who don't know how to write, or maybe haven't quite cottoned on to buying a computer or a laptop yet. You couldn't be further from the truth. We are not a glorified typing service. Our clients are typically savvy, successful people who understand that outsourcing the most important document they'll ever own, on par with their passport maybe, is a good idea. You know, I've written personally a CV for a Premier League football chairman. I've written a CV for some of the most talented executives in the UK, and that's genuinely the case. But outsourcing something that you're not a natural at to somebody who's very good at it, considering we all spend so much time at work and our career is so terribly important to us, and the only thing that's standing between it is our CV and our LinkedIn profile, then surely it makes a good sense to do that. And a lot of people have cottoned on to that now. Okay, good stuff. So we're going to go into the career history in a minute, but again, I'm just going to check that you're all still there. So either use your hands up or use the chat, not the chat, the questions pane. It'd be great to know that you're all still out there. Are you all finding this useful, guys? Fabulous. That's brilliant. Right. Okay. Just click a few buttons. Now, I've got an architect's drawing as the picture on this one. Again, suspense. What have I got this for? Because the career history is all about architecture. Not building architecture, not info, it's about information architecture. It's about the order of bullet points that you present the information in. The first thing I'm going to say, start the career history on page 1. Let me show you my CV again. So I'm going to scroll down. You'll see that the career history starts at the bottom of page 1. If that didn't start till page 2, flashing up on your screen now, imagine I was here at the top of the page. So hang on a sec, get my pen. Imagine I'm here, and this is where where it starts. The issue with that is that I'm on page 2. I've had to scroll to page 2 because what a lot of people do is they will open your CV. They'll want to know your name. They'll want to know, they'll read the first part of the professional summary, but then they'll just scroll down to find out who you're working for now, and in what role and how long you've been there. So if they've scrolled down to page 2 to find that out, well, they're on page 2 now. It's not natural to then go back up to page 1. It's just not the sort of thing you do. However, if you are still, where's my pointer gone? Hang on a second. If you are still on page 1, so down here, use my drawing pen again. So I'm here now. So I've scrolled down from right at the top to here. Then I will likely go back and read all the good stuff on page 1. So what I'm trying to say is if you start on page 2, the career history on page 2, people will miss out everything on page 1 a lot of the time. But if you get the career history starting on page 1, people will go back and read page 1, which of course what you want them to do. Okay, good. So back to the presentation. Okay. Okay, good. So as I say, it's all about the architecture. So it's about the order of bullet points. We've already said that you need to start on page 1. You know, I think that it needs to be in reverse chronological order, unless you're an interim. If you're an interim, then there is a slightly different format that you could use. This format works absolutely fine for the interim market, but if you're a very experienced interim, there is a different format which really kind of expands out the case studies, so that what we do is you present a portfolio of the projects and interim assignments that you've delivered, and then we have the career chronology summarized at the end or underneath that section. But this style works absolutely fine for both permanent and interim markets. So reverse chronological, start on page 1. First thing you want to do is describe the employer. If we know who the employer is and how big they are and what they do, that's quite important. Now, if it's an obvious public sector organisation, well, fine, you maybe don't need to put that. If it's the NHS, we all know what the NHS is, but if it's a lesser well-known organisation, describe them. Then it's important to give a summary of the role. Think about this. Think about giving a summary where if there was nothing else, no other bullet point, people would still get a fairly good handle on what you do. That's what you're trying to achieve with the summary of the role. If you're managerial level, which I suspect a lot of you will be, describe your team. So manage a finance department of 10 people with 3 direct reports, including a financial accountant, a management accountant, and a credit controller, right? I've just made that up. But describe your team, because then we can picture a little organogram in our head. And that little organogram helps us to understand your role better. And then your KPIs. If appropriate, how is your role measured? Do you have very financially and accountancy orientated KPIs, or do your KPIs feed into the overall business KPIs? If we know what your KPIs are, i.e. your key performance indicators, i.e. how your role is measured, it helps us to understand the scope of your role much better. So those 4 bullet points are what I describe as the context building bullet points. Description of employer, summary of role, structure of team, and your KPIs. If you put them in, then everything hangs together much better. You can then have your duties and responsibilities, and you all know, I don't need to tell you about them, you know what they are, just a nice, I would say one line skinny, 2 lines is nice, 3 lines is maybe slightly on the verbose side. About 2 lines for each bullet point describing your duties and responsibilities. So don't just put management accounting. That's far too brief. Put something along the lines of, lead all management accounting for a 500 million turnover business, or for a 500 million budget department, or whatever it might be, including monthly management accounts, forecasting, budgeting, and variance analysis, whatever it is. Okay, that's the sort of detail you need to go in. No one picked me up on whether that was technically accurate or not. I've just made that up off the top of my head. And then achievements, more achievements, as many as you can possibly think of. They're really, really important. And then if you've not been in a job for a terribly long period of time, put your reasons for leaving in there. In recruitment, you are guilty until proven innocent. So if you left a job after 6 months, it will be assumed you had a 6-month probation and you didn't pass it. If you left after 12 months, they'll assume something went wrong. You weren't performing or you didn't get on with them there. So if you were left after a short period of time, explain why. If it was a contract, just put it was a contract. Okay. So it might look something like this. So this first bullet point is a sort of role summary. Second bullet point, structure of team. Third bullet point are KPIs. So maybe just quickly have a read through those whilst I'm just having a quick sip of water. Okay guys, I think I've given you enough time there, so we're going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so just a quick popcorn break, because usually throughout the session and at the end of the session I'll get a lot of people saying, well, what do you guys do? How does your service work? So I'm just going to quickly do that before we move on to the rest of the presentation. So, we, of course, what we do works. I mean, we aren't partnered with CIPFA and the IAB and the ACCA, and we've done stuff with the CPA and the PCG and the API and the Chartered Institute of this and the Chartered Institute of the other. We don't work with these bodies if we're not good at what we do. This isn't just a good presentation. We actually do write very well and create CVs and other personal branding documentation for people that really works. So people who buy our service, you get matched up with someone who's been very senior in their own career. They'll discuss with you and sanitize your career direction. And this all happens during a 2-hour session that's done over the phone or via Skype, whatever you prefer, and it can happen out of hours. So you get matched up with one of our guys, there's a little bit of homework to do, and then they talk to you for 2 hours about your career. And on that call, they'll talk to you about your career direction. They'll talk to you about your value proposition and how you want to pitch yourself to the marketplace. They'll talk about your value-added skills and build that professional summary for you. They'll talk about your achievements and build those case studies for the career highlights. They'll help quantify the results of the case studies, and that's something people find really hard to do. So we have to really push and probe and challenge. And we'll write your CV pretty much from scratch. There are some bits we'll pull over from your old CV, but pretty much built from scratch. And it's all about maximizing your marketability to employers. When we approached CIPFA and the people that manage their benefits, we were told that if we were going to be added as a member benefit, we went through a very, very rigorous selection process. But they said to us, as well as that, you need to give our members the best deal you possibly can. We don't want to see a better deal anywhere else. So that's what we've done. So if you guys stick around to the end, I'm offering at least 150 quid off some services that are very relevant to you that I think you should seriously consider investing in, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, so let's have a look at the earlier career section here. So I'm just going to go back to my CV. So here we go, that I've scribbled all over. The scribbles have gone. The wonders of technology. Fantastic. Okay, so you can see here, these are the bullet points, and then I've got some achievements here, and then I've got the job before that. This is when Hayes were good. I think they've gone downhill since I left. I'm not sure it was because I left, but they've certainly gone downhill a little bit. But yeah, I used to work for Hayes, operated at senior management level. I'd managed 3 teams across London. I set up one of their divisions in the city for them. But you get to a point where your career is just a bit old, really. You know, no one really cares what I did back in 1996. But if I wanted to elevate something from here, I can put it in that career highlights section, as I have done. But what I'm saying is, and you can see from my presentation here, you don't need to go back to the 80s. Okay, that's why I've got a poster of the 80s there. Just focus on the last 8 to 10 years and a maximum of 4 jobs, unless you're an interim or a contractor. So the last 8 to 10 years are the last 4 jobs. Put the dates, put the months, put the name of your employer, put the job title. So just tuck this away. All the earlier career gets tucked away at the back end of the CV, just as a basic list, all a bunch of one-liners. Contractors and interims, as I say, expand out the career highlights. Put a little box in that says since 2006 or whenever it was that you've been an interim, and then put something that says since 2006 I've done work for these people, these clients, and here's a list of example projects or example assignments that I've done over this period, and they're in no particular order and not all are listed. And then you can have a nice portfolio of maybe 8 to 10 case studies describing the biggest and juiciest and most relevant pieces of work you've done, and then the earlier career becomes the career chronology, and you put your entire career in there listed so people can see where you worked and when. I put a little statistic down here as well. I think we reckon now about 10% of applicants have a professionally written CV. So we reckon probably on average about 5 people applying for each and every job have a professionally written CV. You know, we did a big webinar recently, similar size to this. We got, I think, about 25, 30 orders from it. And those people are your competition. You know, we do a lot of work with the ACCA, so, you know, they'll be competing with you. And typically when we do a webinar for those guys, we'll get about 20 people order our services, not because we're ramming it down their throats, but because it's a damn good idea. But these guys then become your competition. So they've all got CVs looking like mine, and you've all got CVs looking like yours. So, you know, some of you might have decent CVs. I don't know. The average person doesn't. And, you know, there's the competition factor there. So that's the earlier career. Now, I'm not going to spend loads of time on this slide. The qualifications, CPD, all I want to say here is obviously you put your education, but this can, for you guys who are quite senior, this goes at the bottom part of the CV or the back of the CV. This doesn't need to be the second section. If you've just left uni, it's the second section on the CV. For you guys, this can go at the back. You can mention that your qualifications, the key ones, in your summary. You know, so say you're a CIPFA qualified this, that, or the other, or a CIMA qualified this, that, and the other, or an ACCA qualified this, that, and the other, whatever it is. Yeah, you can put that in the professional summary, but the actual qualifications section can go at the back of the CV. So put your education in there, put your professional quals. But training courses, this is the thing I'm driving at. Most people miss off their damn training courses, and that's really important. You know, people really do. Employers value people who've had continuous professional development. So do put that on the CV. You don't need to put your university unless it was red brick. You don't need to put the name of your school, really, unless it was high profile. You don't need the dates on these because it just gives away your age, and your age might not be in your favor. You know, unfortunately, it's an ageist world. So if you're tipping over the sort of 45, 50 mark, a lot of people will be, you know, you don't want to tell them that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not ageist in the slightest. I'm not far off that. But I advocate making a CV age neutral. Don't put your date of birth on there. Don't put the dates on your education. Be clever about your earlier career if it dates back to the 70s. You know what I mean? So that's the qualifications. Personal details, similar thing, put that at the back end. You know, a lot of people spend, the first third of the CV is personal details. Everything from whether they're married, divorced, or single to, you know, their national insurance number, all sorts of stuff. You don't need all that. Just put at the top of the CV your name, a couple of telephone numbers, maybe an email address, and everything else can go at the back of the CV. And that's following basic marketing principles, call to action, or the calls to action and basic details. You put them at the back. You don't get marketing brochures or flyers or adverts in glossy magazines where the first third of that advert is dedicated to contact details. You put those at the back end of the CV, although I will say put the telephone numbers at the top because that's where recruiters are used to seeing them. Address, that should be there, but be mindful of confidentiality. If your CV is going to sit on a job board or a public forum, well, you might just want to put the town that you live. Email, driving license, where you'll work, are you security cleared, what languages do you speak, are you eligible to work in the country that you want to apply for jobs, and all that kind of stuff. That can all go tucked away in the personal details towards the back end of the CV. Okay, so just a bit of general stuff, and then we're going to talk about LinkedIn. Write your CV in a tight writing style, in active tense, in the third person. So you can drop subjective pronouns. Don't talk about I and my. You can drop little adjoining words like at and the in certain places. But basically, it's a tight writing style, active tense, in the third person. Get your spelling right, get your formatting right. They're really, really important. A lot of people get, they have inconsistent formatting, the spelling's not right, the grammar's not right. So get all that stuff right at all costs. Okay, recommendations. This is something that I'm quite passionate about. LinkedIn has a statistic that you're 3 times more likely to be contacted about an opportunity through your LinkedIn profile if you have good recommendations. Okay, so it stands to reason that if you pull some good recommendations into your CV, that's actually a pretty good idea. Recommendations or testimonials, they've kind of come in and out of fashion over a number of years, and right now, LinkedIn has kind of brought them back into fashion. So I would recommend having a couple of good recommendations in your CV. What is bad? What is bad is I've known so-and-so for 10 years, they're honest, reliable and trustworthy, and I would have no hesitation in recommending them for any job. That's not good, okay? What is good is something like this. If I just go to my CV, I'm going to scroll down. Richard Harris here, really senior guy. This is a guy this is a dragon investor, angel investor, non-exec director for a number of boards, very successful business person. He said some nice things about me there. Libby Calaby used to be one of my competitors. Talks about me as being one of the few genuinely talented individuals left in this industry, and how we worked as competitors, but I was always full of great advice, and I've created a good business based on integrity. That's a good one. The kind of flowery, I've known so-and-so for 10 years and they're honest, reliable and trustworthy, that's not a good one. Okay, so what's happened to the presentation? Just bear with me a second. There we go, got it back. Now I've lost you guys. Hang on a second. Sorry about that, guys. You're all there still. And my presentation's here. There we go. Blimey. Technology, eh? Right, LinkedIn. Let's have a little chat about LinkedIn, eh? I assume you all know what it is, but just in case, LinkedIn, I suppose, started off life as a bit of a kind of, I remember when I used to go, I was in sales, and I used to go around and my clients gave me their business cards and my suppliers gave me their business cards, and I put them in a nice little leather business card holder. And that was all well and good, but LinkedIn became sort of an online portal for keeping all your business contacts all in one place. By default, it became the kind of pond that recruiters fish, because it quickly became one enormous database of candidates. So LinkedIn is an enormous candidate database, and that's why all the recruiters have login details for a sort of enhanced LinkedIn profile, which allows them to source candidates through LinkedIn. So it really is a critical place to be. You know, if you're looking for a job, you should be on LinkedIn. And not just if you're looking for a job, you know, you're considered to be a bit more savvy if you've got a presence on LinkedIn. So it's not just for job seekers. So it doesn't mean you're a job seeker if you're on there, but it's very important. And did you know, this is a great statistic, more people were hired through LinkedIn than Monster in 2012. I think that's astonishing, and it just goes to show how important having a good LinkedIn profile is. I'm going to read this statistic first. 85% of recruiters or hiring managers will check you out on LinkedIn after they've shortlisted you. So if you're on someone's shortlist because they liked your CV, 85% of them will then go and check you out on LinkedIn. So it's absolutely essential that your profile is complete and well written. And the key things to focus on are your headline, your summary, the positions, and the projects. So the headline's the bit that kind of defaults to, you know, finance director at the NHS, for example. You want to change that so it's more of a value proposition. So you might say finance director with a track record of blah, 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 a little bit like what we did in the summary, but vary the way you write it so it doesn't feel like you've copied and pasted. The summary is a little bit like the summary on the CV, but again, vary it. Capture the essence of you. Talk about how you can add value. Talk about your current situation and your objective, but wrap that up in a nicely written paragraph that's not too long. It's similar to your CV, but it's not exactly the same. CV's third person, LinkedIn is first person. I mean, I could do a whole session, and actually we do sessions on LinkedIn and nothing else. So another thing that we can do for you guys, you know, who are members of CIPFA. The positions. Now, a lot of people just copy and paste all the bullet points on their CV. Don't do that. Expand out the role summary and then just put 2 or 3 really big achievements from each role. So it's a little bit like an expanded out role summary with some achievements. And then the projects. The projects are where you can put your biggest achievements, and you can even just copy and paste the career highlights in there. And activate the project section, and you can reorder these sections so that it's everything's optimized. So that people, you know, you're selling yourself, because sometimes the sections on LinkedIn aren't in an obvious order. And also the key skill sections, one, to make sure you populate as well, because that's searchable and some of the keyword searches use that. Okay. So before we do the Q&A, what can we do for you guys? Well, we've said, of course, your CV and your LinkedIn profile are absolutely critical if you want to get ahead in your career. And we all know that you spend a lot of time at work. Most people's career is pretty important to them. The 2 most important things are your CV and your LinkedIn profile. Without those, you know, you're not moving on in your career. So what we've said we'll do is, if you order our professional level CV writing service, we will discount that heavily, and we'll also do a free, either a write from scratch or a rewrite of your LinkedIn profile and a cover letter. For most of you guys with 7 years plus work experience, it's going to be $250 plus VAT. But that is an enormous discount off our rate card. That's actually £155 discount to the nearest 20 pence. You won't get anything that competitive anywhere else. That is a special deal for CIPFA members. You can also buy our post-webinar pack, which is basically we'll send you a CV template, we'll send you the PowerPoint slides, we'll send you a CV writing tutorial, and we'll send you an ebook, an interview coaching ebook. That's just 15 quid plus VAT. So that's very, very worthwhile having. If you order that and then subsequently decide that you want the CV, then we'll do you we'll sort of make sure we'll look after you. But it's you know, the deal there is as low as we could ever go. And if you want to get yourself ready for January, I would strongly suggest taking a serious look at that. That deal is only around until the end of this week. We might extend a slightly lesser deal to you, stretch it into next week, but that deal is only on until the end of the month, okay? And to order, there's the link. So I'm going to put that in the chat box, and then we're going to do the Q&A. So it is, you can't click it on screen, but you can click it in here. Hopefully I've spelt that right. www.cvandinterviewadvisors.co.uk/CIPFA offer. Now, just to explain, guys, CIPFA and the guys who run their member benefits wanted me to give you guys a really good deal. So hopefully you don't feel I'm selling too much at you. I'm not trying to do that. I just want to do what I promised I would do and give you guys the best possible deal we can for those people who want to invest in our services. As I said, usually we get, between 20 and 30 orders from these webinars. So they are popular. So get in as early as you can, and then we can give you the earliest slot possible. But we will accommodate everybody. Nobody will miss out, and we'll try and accommodate everybody's time frames. So I'm just going to post that. There you go. I think you should be able to, if I've spelt it right, you should be able to click that. If not, it's on screen there, but it's basically our web address /CIPFA offer. Okay, good. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation apart from the Q&A. So I'm just going to pull up the questions now. And if anybody has any questions, then just fire away, and I'll get through as many of them as I possibly can. Somebody said achievements. Any recommendations for striking concise balance between what is maybe quite industry department specific achievements and what you wish to convey as wider transferable skills? Yeah, it's a good question, Alan. I would keep the achievements and the kind of skill separate, if you like. Focus the achievements around the case studies on page 1, and then stick a load of others as a separate section, like a subsection of the career history, because the bullet points that describe what you do in the role will then give those achievements more context. If we understand what you do in your job, when you're describing to us your departmentally specific achievements, they make more sense to us, because we know what you do. And again, the stories that we write, the case studies, they do give it a little bit more context so they can live alone on page 1. Somebody said, any advice for those of you who are less experienced, recently qualified? How can we differentiate ourselves? Olga, no differently to how we've described this today. If you are straight out of uni as a graduate, then we do have a graduate format where you basically expand the career highlights into 4 or 5 case studies that focus around things you've done that demonstrate that you've got transferable skills. So project management, business acumen, an understanding of financial and economic principles maybe, and you give some paragraphs that explain that you've got things you've done, projects you've worked on that prove you've got those skills. But really anybody that's kind of 2 years plus into their career should be applying this style of CV. Right, what else have we got? Oh, yes, that's a good point. Anybody who wants the post-webinar pack, just email us, because we haven't put that buy now button on the website. So just email us at info@cvandinterviewadvisors.co.uk. Just email us if you want the post-webinar pack. Somebody said, any extracurricular e.g. sporting stuff that you think may be relevant, where to put these? Nick, if it's something outstanding, put it on there. If you've climbed Mount Everest, or you've done some kind of big event where you raised a load of money for charity, or you've done something truly outstanding, yeah, by all means put it in an interest section towards the back of the CV. But if it's pretty mundane stuff like captain of your local football team or something like that, then I would leave it out. One of the guys who was on a webinar we did last week, I think it was last week, had represented Britain in some European Championships or something in one of the sports, swimming I think it was, something like that. And that's something you might put on there, but if it's more mundane, don't worry about it. How do you record career breaks? Should you say why? Rachel, definitely. If you've had a career break, definitely explain why, and explain it in as most positive terms as you possibly can. Somebody said you mentioned search engine orientated keywords for key skills. Can you give examples? So yeah, that might be financial accounting, management accounting, budgeting and forecasting, treasury, you know, those sorts of things, the sorts of skills that you might need to have as accountants. But equally, you might put some other stuff in there like team leadership, you know, assembling teams, performance management, stakeholder management, project management, things like that might be important as well. Somebody said, do you write CVs for individuals wanting to change industry sector? At Delhi, we write CVs for anybody with any challenges, whether it be career change, graduates, senior execs, people looking to change careers. We've done it. We've seen it all. So absolutely. Any recommendations for a CV targeted internationally, e.g. Australia, New Zealand? Mark, I think we've got a pretty good handle on some of the conventions internationally, and we found when we've researched it that our CV transcends most. We're aware of the nuances, but it typically transcends most regional variations because it's based on marketing, it's based on psychology, and it's based on recruitment principles. So, you know, we've done CVs for people who have got jobs in Australia and New Zealand. If it's the US, I've got a US team anyway. If it's Europe, I've got people in Europe. But Australia, New Zealand, you know, I've talked to CV writers over there. They are very similar to the UK. So I don't have any problems being quite bold about our abilities there. Any particular advice, tips for internal jobs, promotions, opportunities, and how to sell yourself to colleagues who already know you? Yeah, it's a good question, Alice. We run something called a Career Enhancement Network, and if you're interested in that, it's $7.99 a month. And you pay $7.99 a month, and there's a whole heap of stuff in there about CV writing, interview technique, LinkedIn profiles, but there's also stuff about how to grow your career, how to keep a chart of your career successes and all that kind of stuff. We're constantly adding content to that. And a lot of good information about that kind of stuff can be found in there. So if you're interested in that, let me know. What else? Glenn's sort of challenging the recommendations on LinkedIn, and, you know, is there a danger that it might be just your mate saying stuff? Yes, there's always that. But if somebody has got lots of recommendations and somebody else hasn't got any, you probably make a call that that person with lots of recommendations somewhere down the line must be doing a pretty good job. So, yeah, you know, it's not a perfect world, but as a general rule, I would say that. If you work for the same organization for 8 years in different roles, some for only a few months, should these be documented as separate roles in the CV? What I would do, Lizzie, is I would have employer, position, date, to put employer, name of your employer, position, various, date, the whole dates, and then I would put subheadings for the individual roles. I hope that makes sense. Sean's saying, would you advise mentioning the salary of each role you have worked in? Not on the CV, Sean, no. And there are certainly tactics as well when you're talking about salary expectations with recruiters, and when you're negotiating salary for a job. And again, that's the sort of thing that we do in further webinars that we do, which would be more than happy to do for CIPFA. What else have you asked me? Do you have any tips on selling leadership and management skills when only managing a small team of 4? Only that you've got to try and make the best of it, really. You know, if you've developed somebody who's gone on to get promoted, or you've turned around an underperforming team or something like that, that's always good fare for the CV. But, you know, the number of people have managed, you know, it kind of is as it is, and there's not much you can do about that. You're just going to be pretty straight down the line with it, and that is a hurdle, because I know a lot of people who are probably ready for the next step up but haven't managed big teams. But you've just got to try and maybe leverage virtual teams that you've managed when you've maybe run projects, and if you haven't, maybe volunteer to do a project that the company's going to benefit from, and assemble a virtual team, and then maybe you can say that you've managed up to 10 people, you know, in kind of project and business as usual environments, and that's a way of kind of maybe slightly inflating it a little bit, but in a credible way. Amit's saying, for those volunteering in charities outside of work and hold a considerable role, would you put that on a CV? Yeah, I think I would, Amit. Yeah, I'd need to see what it was, but I think I would. Jane's saying, I'm looking to apply for a senior role, although I've been out of finance for 3 years. What chronology should I use, as both this role and previous finance roles are very relevant to the role I plan to apply for? It's a difficult question to answer without specifically looking at it, Jane, but you've got to just make each role look as applicable as they possibly can to the role you're applying for. But by front-loading the CV with the summary, the key skills and the career highlights, you can sort of present the most relevant information before people read the career history, and then make the career history look as appropriate as you can by being a bit strategic with what bullet points you put in there. Someone saying, Andeep saying, newly qualified accountant but only a few years experience, i.e. no real management experience and more of training roles in several teams. How would I sell myself? Same thing, Andeep. I mean, the achievements don't have to be around, setting the world alight. I've personally done a CV for a guy who was a bookkeeper who'd gone into a company and they were spending 10 hours a month on payroll queries, and he implemented a new payroll system, a new process and a new way of handling queries, which cut that down from 10 hours a month to 2 hours a month, so like an 80% drop in, or an 80% increase in efficiency. It wasn't on a grand level, but it still made a lovely story or case study for the CV. Mark saying he's retired but looking to provide consultancy services, target at financial regulators, central banks, that sort of a thing. To what extent would CV writing service be tailored to help in that area? Mark, I think our style, because it's based on marketing principles, I think that absolutely comes into play. We kind of take that approach anyway. We see it very much as a marketing task, and if you're going to pitch yourself in that way, your CV and LinkedIn profile are as important, if not more important, than anybody's really, because that's going to be the medium in which they're going to be judging your abilities. Great question from Peter. How long should the CV be? I think up to 3 pages, Peter. People talk about 2 pages, fine. If it fits on 2 pages, great. But if it doesn't, up to 3 pages is fine. Howard saying, as a manager, I'm interested in behaviors and attitudes and less about what people have achieved. How should this be reflected in a CV? I think as a general rule, Howard, from our research, that hiring managers assess those things in interview rather than on the CV. Because as well as I do that what people say on their CV, the person that pitches up to interview, is very different to how they've described themselves on paper. So the behavioral stuff is usually misleading. So I would be judging, I think best recruitment practice is to judge people on their abilities and hard skills and achievements on the CV, because they must have the soft skills, otherwise they wouldn't have achieved the things they've achieved, and then judge their cultural fit and behaviours in a competency-based interview environment in the interview process. Dele saying, how do you write in voluntary roles? I would create a section at the end called voluntary roles and just put them in as one-liners. John's asking about interim CVs and the problems with talking to agencies about that kind of stuff. If you go onto the PCG website, John, the Professional Contractors Group website, there's an article I've written all about that, which I think you'll find enlightening. But you might want to give me a call offline. Just make contact with me outside of the webinar, and I can have a chat with you about that and how we do a lot of CVs for contractors and interims, and we're considered to be hands down market leaders in that area. So give us a shout and we can help you with that specifically. Rachel saying, if you want to change direction in your career, should you change the emphasis of recent past experience? Yeah, absolutely, Rachel. You should. You've got to make the CV as targeted as possible. Catherine's saying she hasn't managed anyone yet. Would you recommend doing an online leadership and management course? I wouldn't do the course because you think that's going to sell you on the CV. I would do the course to make you a more effective manager, so when you get that responsibility you can achieve more and then put that on the CV. Doing the course isn't going to help somebody think you've got good management skills, but by all means do it to become a better manager, so when you are managing people you've got more achievements to then subsequently talk about on the CV. Trish is saying, how do you avoid your career history demonstrating your age? Just leave off the dates on the very, very earlier career if you think that that's not selling you. So you could put previous career working for these companies or something like that. And Lizzie, yes, definitely tailor your CV depending on the role you're applying for. All right, guys, looks like we've come to the end there. Yeah, you've been fabulous. Brilliant questions. Great group of people to have on. Really, really enjoyed it tonight. I hope you guys have as well. Just to finish off, guys, that link to order that fantastic super duper end of month order, www.cvandinterviewadvisors.co.uk/CIPFA offer, and it will take you to a web page where you can order the service based on the number of years of work experience you've got. Anybody got any questions? Just shoot us an email offline. If you want to buy the post-webinar pack, just shoot us an email and we'll get that arranged for you. But other than that, I'm going to sign off now. Have a great night, guys, and speak to you soon.